And it didn't make meaning to me that time. They will understand it today. So you are welcome to the online forum of the African Center for Bioethics Training and Research. This is also Emechada, Matthew Todo on the stage, and I remain your presenter, Paschal Anaeke. Today we're going to be looking at the issue of biodiversity loss, and we're going to investigate into environmental crisis in developing countries with respect to the issue of biodiversity loss. To start with, I'll start this with a story we are told when we are young, or the way they define the social studies. When I was in the junior secondary school, as a subject we are doing, they call it social studies. And the definition they gave us, that is, social studies is the study of man and his environment. So it didn't make meaning to me that time. They will understand it today. So when I sit down and analyze, what does it mean, man and his environment, especially in this world that encourages diversity, equity, and inclusion. So look at this, say, okay, man, one kind, a monarch is out there. Then environment is possession, is property. So he has the right to dispose it as he wishes, as he deems fit. So that affects one's attitude towards the environment. When we are in the junior religious classes, that God created everything, heaven and earth, and saw that it's good, then he gave man power to dominate, to conquer, to dominate the earth. So from this also you see that attitude of dominance, conquest of the environment. Then growing through this process, we also come to the philosophical dogmatism of the early Greeks, exemplified in Parmenides' thesis. What is what is not, is not. So in this way, we concentrated on being, concerning non-being to total oblivion. And this has disastrous consequences for humanity because you cannot concentrate on one aspect of reality without being haunted by what Jimuna called omnipresent phantoms of what is not. So knowing that both what is and what is not are components of reality, basic components of reality. So when we translate this attitude to the environment, you see human nature relationship will be that of stewardship. Man will be like a steward of creation, not just a conqueror of being. So when we look at the planet, we all exist, the animals, the plant species, all those stuff. Everyone has his own role to play in that ontological space it occupies. But activities of human beings seem to disorganize this, bringing a sort of ontological balance. When we look at the issue of fishing, we enter the river, we kill all types of fishes available. We don't even leave ones for tomorrow. Oil spillage in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria, the Ogini case, the typical example. Oil spillage destroyed arable soil and marine life. All these things, they're making life to be as if it's only human beings that can live. When I was growing up in a village in Imo State, we had some forests, certain forests. There are certain trees that don't need to become cut. There are certain animals you not kill. With the advent of Western religion, they began to see those forests as evil. Some trees, they say these trees are responsible for evils in the village, in the family. So certain trees were cut down, certain animals were killed, certain forests were cleared. And then those animals that see that as their natural habitat, with the destruction of this their natural habitat, they find their way in human, like in my house in the village, these squirrels and I don't know what we call all those who's they are not living in the ceiling. So there's possibility of zoonotic disease, that is disease that animals suffer now coming when the animals will bring it to the home. We've destroyed their natural habitat through deforestation, rapid urbanization, and then clearing of all these forests in the name of clearing evil forests. So all these activities of humans bring about biodiversity loss. There are other issues. There's natural extinction. We were talking about the one that is anchored on human activity. So today we are going to be looking at the issue of that biodiversity loss in the environment, what we can do to conserve biodiversity so as to really play our role as guardians, shepherd of being instead of destroyers or conquerors of nature. Thank you, my dear Agonwa, the guru, fellow guru in this Bioethics forum. We are here to have a sort of intellectual brainstorming on the issue of biodiversity law to see how we can change people's attitude toward the environment from that of conquest to that of guardian. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Pascal. Like you rightly introduced, my name is Ahmed Musa Meteta. And the issue of environmental ethics is an issue of considerable concern to environmentalists, especially given the fact that the environment constitutes part of man's ontological space, and the environment is very important for both man and the other beings in the biotic sphere. I want to the issue of a biodiversity loss for me. I want to link it to the book of Genesis, where it was said that God created the man to dominate, and increase and multiply. That biblical injunction for me is the fons et origo, or the origin of biodiversity loss and the decimation of other beings in the biotic sphere. For instance, when you give human being charge over every other creations in the universe, what you have simply done is to dehumanize and to bring man and maybe to put man at the locus of everything in creation. In other words, man has become, the alpha and omega of everything in the environment. So every other beings in the biosphere should now be destroyed and exploited for man's, recreation and man's happiness and for man's utilization. So for me, we need to change that mindset that man should conquer, dominate. So that dominance and conquest that emanated from the Bible, because everybody refers to the Holy Book as a book that gives charge that everybody respects. So I think it's very, very wrong, because the environment, there is a symbiotic relationship between man and the environment. For instance, there is what we call a Plastic Temple's theory of life forces, whereby there is a spider web of existence. Every being there's a hierarchy of forces, starting from the spiritual beings, the ancestors, man, animals, plants, and other, pre-existing strata, like inanimate objects. Even now, people have included the AI now in the hierarchy of forces. Now, the AI has come in. There was nothing like that before, but there are now beings that maybe the AI, we don't know where to put them now, whether it's before human or after human. That one will be decided. We don't know where to place them. So it has become an issue. So in plastic temple, for instance, using temples, model to show the inevitability of man and other beings and the interconnectedness of other beings, he has said it that for balance and respect of every being in the biotic community or in the biosphere, all of us are in the hierarchy. And for us to have balance, anyone is like a spider web that there is no how you will touch it without vibrating the entire network of being in the universe. So we need to see other beings as our fellow tenants. So from African environmental temperament, as an African environmentalist, I want to make a proposal for the acceptance of every beings in the biosphere. Let us just see them, just as Aldo Leopold said, as plain members. We are all plain members of the biosphere. That the being of others, the being of man and the being of other beings in the universe are being affected. If anything happens to man, it will vibrate. If anything happens to animals, it will vibrate, because all of us are members of the hierarchy of forces. So The biodiversity laws should we should discourage the attitude of dominance and conquest originating from the Bible that we should increase, multiply, and exploit every other beings. No, they are our members. They are our fellow tenants. We should treat them as our fellow tenants. Though, so to speak, we are the rational, the higher animals, so to speak. But that does not confer us with that authority to decimate them as if they are not part of us. Because look at the air we breathe, for instance, the oxygen we have, they emanate from the vegetations out there. You can imagine the deleterious consequences it portends to mankind when we deforest and demolish all the vegetations out there. So they are there to give us oxygen. Then by the time we exhale carbon, dioxide, it's equally for their own utilization. So there is a symbiotic relationship between man and other beings. So let us see them as co-tenants, in the biosphere, and not, beings to be trampled upon and destroyed. By so doing, by treating other beings with respect, there will be ecological brotherhood. There will be ecological oneness. In other words, we are extending that fraternal solidarity to other beings, seeing them that they are our brothers, but in a different, species. You understand? So by so doing, we live in harmony. We live in ecological harmony, with other beings in the universe, irrespective of their ontological placement. Thank you.
Yeah, well done. Good. Or what we are looking at from what you said, we are taking towards what they call a concentric egalitarianism.
Egalitarianism, yeah.
So when we talk about this, looking at the activities of human, that we're not looking at natural extinction, or looking at the one that is as a sort of human activity, unsustainable use of the environment. So we look at the issue of Lagos State, for example, has banned the use of one-use plastic. There's a prediction that by the year 2030, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish.
Fossil.
So conservation measures now banning one-use plastic, trying to mitigate. So what can you say about the issue of plastic in ocean and activities of humans?
Wow.
And this adverse effect to aquatic life.
Well, thank you for that answer. I think the Lagos State has done well because by banning or placing a ban on the use of plastic, or this takeaway that we see them floating out on the lagoon, when we go to the lagoon front, it will help to mitigate the disastrous effects of all these plastic, because sometimes you see that the fishes are actually looking for how to feed on them, and those things are equally hazardous for the lives of the fish in the water. So I think it's a welcome development in the sense that it will help to curtail the defacing of the aquatic environment, and the poisoning of all the aquatic animals as a result of those plastic and all that. It's a good one. But before they do that, they should equally make provision for alternatives. You don't just say, oh yeah, you ban this, because they equally serve purposes. They can equally carry out a kind of a recycling factories, whereby some people will collect them rather than emptying them at the ocean or at the lagoon. They kind of recycle them. By the time they recycle them, they will not be taken to the ocean. So it's a good measure put in place by the Lagos State government to curtail how will I put it, the splitting or the defacing of the environment and the pollution of the environment with the plastic and what have you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we look at another issue. How can we validly claim to be environmental activists? Talking about sustainability. And we also depend on the environment for sustenance. Our food, we derive our vitamins from plants, animals, our protein daily. And then we're also talking about conservation of biodiversity conservation. And we need to preserve the lives of plants and animals. And these are what we depend on for daily sustenance. I don't know whether you look at this, the paradox of sustainability and sustenance.
Yeah, the sustainability and sustenance is there are two of them are actually inseparable in man's quotidian existence. in the sense that man cannot, God created everything in such a way that man will feed on them because we need to survive too. If you are saying we should actually sustain them, for instance, we sustain them for our own benefit. We consume the animals. We consume some things in the aquatic environment. For instance, the vegetation. We need the vegetables. We need all those things to live. So by the time we sustain them, you understand, the sustenance here is not to exploit them beyond their ability or capacity to regenerate themselves. That's where it becomes a problem. There should be moderation because if we are to sustain them and say, okay, because of that, we would die too.
So we
Because
should
man,
like this of say tree planting. When you cut
yes,
down
when you
country,
call that,
plant another
there
one.
should be a kind of
When you see like an animal that
replacement.
has animal that
Yes,
like
yes,
rabbit and the what they call the kids or what they call the
yeah,
you don't
yes.
kill
You
the
don't
mother
kill
and
the-
all the
because of
you kill the
sustenance.
nation, you take one and leave the other
And
to
leave the other to
regenerate.
regenerate. So it's only when you kill or maybe exploit
Finish
them,
everything.
finish everything beyond their capacity to regenerate or to reproduce. That's when it becomes a problem because they will go into extinction and that species will never be in existence anymore. So there should be moderation, and even ecological empathy. You should empathize with other ones. But if you are saying sustainability and sustenance, if you can, you see the two words. We need to sustain. We need to
We talk about sustaining the environmental sustainability and depending on this for our own
for our own
sustenance.
sustenance. So it's a two-way thing that we need to sustain them for our own sustenance, but not beyond the capacity to reproduce or to send them into.
So does it point to the issue of Ndomini, which we are going to talk
Yes,
about?
that's the
Because now,
yes.
Akanipa is
That's
not the same. I don't see
complementarity.
to see the same as Ndomini that
Yes.
because Ndomini now we are sustaining the water
So what's
for the
fish?
sustenance of the fish. So that is anthropocentric. So
It's not a
but
concentric.
the Akanipa,
that's
that's
a-
symbiotic relations is ecocentric.
Yeah.
Daniel Ma, Daniel Woketa.
Why the other one
Ebebere,
is parasitic? The other one is symbiotic.
Onyebiri, Beyabiri. We are sharing the world, so we have our own place. Don't come and stay in your space, I stay in my
My
space.
space.
Don't encroach into my own space. So Onyebiri, Beyabiri, that one has higher ethical significance than Ndomini. Ndomini is anthropocentric, but Onyebiri, Beyabiri, Ebebere, Ugobere, Akanipa is in a higher ethical level. So that is ecocentric.
Yes.
That's Akanipa is an evil concept. Line, let the right hand watch the left, let the left watch the right. When you believe
For two of them
you
to be
live
clean.
and let live.
Yeah.
Maintain your space and maintain my space. Don't encroach my space and not encroach your own space.
It's a good cultural infusion into environmental
So we
sustainability.
also see from our discussion so far, and we see that there are certain barriers to effective conservation. Look at the issue of rest in the bottom approach to development. When certain third world countries are under economic pressure, or let's say underdeveloped countries, but that would group the conclusion that some people's activity led to the problem they are suffering. So it's underdeveloped countries, we call them like countries like Nigeria, underdeveloped by Europe, not to Walter Rodney's book.
Yeah.
So due to economic pressure, they continue to lower their environmental standard to attract multinational corporations,
Corporations, yeah.
who in turn come and degrade the environment
That's another
and
problem.
expected the profit
That's another
from
problem.
oil spillage and all those
Look at
stuff. So it's
your
also a
land,
problem.
for instance. People living there, they are living under hazardous environment. And because of this commodification of the environment has been commodified. Because of that, they don't care about the people living, the residents, and other beings in the biosphere. Because of that,
Come with that metaphysical dogmatism.
So
Only me.
for them,
I
capitalist mentality of me, profit making, commodification of the environment,
Maximization,
maximization
not
of profit. So because of that, they have suppressed every other thing, living just because of their own selfish interest to make money. Therefore, the environment has become an object of commodification. Use it to make money for their own selfish interest. So that attitude should equally be suppressed. That's why we equally make a case for our own African, injecting some African values like Ubuntu, the Ojama into African environmental ethics, familyhood, ecological familyhood and brotherhood. You understand? The Ojama spirit, the Ubuntu spirit. I am because we are. All of us are in the same environment.
Okay, Dr. Todo, now when we look at what can we recommend from what you have just discussed, what are the recommendations for, that can help to mitigate biodiversity loss and environmental sustainability?
Thank you, Dr. Pascal and Dr. Nasiru. I want to add to the issue of bringing in foreign investors to extrapolate our resources and by so doing follow the land. It reminds me of a story that was in the news in 1987. I remember, if you can remember, there's this issue of cocoa toxic waste. One of these Western countries brought in some shiploads of toxic waste to be dumped in a town called Cocoa, somewhere in the Delta area. And do you know that the elders of the town agreed to or accepted the drum load of toxic waste? Thankfully, an organization came up, heard the story, and took it to national attention, and then that plan was scuttled. And you see, because of selfish or capitalist or greedy inclinations, the elders of the town refused or did not consider the danger to the environment. Do you know what it means if you are to dump toxic waste here in the ground? The effect will spiral and will be noticeable for the next 100 years. You see, so, but because of greed, selfishness, the elders of the town,
Economic pressure. That's what I think. They lower the economic the
yes,
environmental standard
they
to
neglected
attract those so that
yes,
they can get peanuts.
exactly. So now, what does it mean? It now takes us to the issue of what we now recommend. First thing we need to recommend is political re-education, enlightenment.
That's replacing conquering nature mentality with existing
Exactly.
coexistence
We
ethics.
need to educate and educate our people, educate people, enlighten them on the dangers of this thing. They need to have a rethink. If, as Comrade also suggested, probably have to enlighten them on the original indigenous African suggestions to managing.
That embody environmental conservation.
Yes, we need to go because it's apparent that Western capitalism has eroded our indigenous mentality. So that soldier will no longer feel the connection between I and the environment.
So we are talking about policy integration.
Yes.
Like bringing using indigenous concept like Ojama and also mentioned,
And so on.
Sakane Park,
Just
tourism,
exactly.
even
Yeah, that should-
conservation laws and
that
policies.
should be first recommendation. That the eradication of the masses of the people should be first recommendation.
You also mentioned holistic approaches,
Of course,
like
very,
combining ecological, economic, and cultural strategies
Very
rather
much
than
so.
isolated fixes.
Yes.
So you have to bring all this together
Together,
to produce a unified approach.
yeah. And I think in the country of Nigeria, where we have what we call the National Orientation Agency, I think the government has to come up with policies to focus more on the environment. It could be national environmental.
Under environmental
Yeah,
protection.
we have something like that. I think we need something like that, and they need to be propped up to do more on their mission. And that way, I think the issue of environmental management will.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Todono. So we're going to wrap up this discussion. So from the analysis so far, we see that issue of biodiversity loss, we see it as both ecological and philosophical.
Yes.
Lasting solution should require abandoning Western hierarchical views of nature and embracing African relational philosophies.
Exactly.
And by recognizing humans as ecosystem participants, just as you mentioned, rather than rulers or conquerors, the developing nation can also pioneer sustainable models, balancing economic needs with environmental ethics, and not shipping hazardous waste from the west to the same poor countries that have been underdeveloped.
Exacerbate their ecological
Yeah, so
issues.
our discussion is significant in reframing conservative debate through non-Western wisdom tradition, offering fresh paradigm for global sustainability challenges. So when all these are applied, like future research will focus on how we can integrate African indigenous thought system.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about some of the animals that were killed, like BRC, they got them BRC. That he goat can stay 20 years. We're going about nobody will touch it, untouchable. There are some forests that were preserved. Yeah. They cut all these certain trees that are considered sacred. This is a way of preserving
fear on you not to
the effect of Western region of many see that people begin to see that those trees are evil.
Yeah.
You cut them down. But those trees are
Environmental
sacred,
preservation
preserved
mechanisms.
trees,
Yeah.
preserved forests. Animals that are reserved, you don't kill them, leave them, but everything has been either has made or you conquer them, you kill them, decimate them, just because you accuse them to be or bring bad, source of bad omen to the community. We need to come down, we need to rethink, we need to come back to senses and then sift whatever is coming from the west. We don't need to swallow hook, line, and seek. I
Exactly,
think
exactly.
when it comes, we look at it, we need to promote our indigenous thought system, apply to conservation law instead of swallowing whatever that is imported to us from the west. We also try to monitor, we create our own local surveillance of multinational corporations. See when they are going against environmental standards, and we need to rise up and challenge their activities. Thank you very much, and we will put forward this discussion for further, investigation and expansion. Thank you very much.
For having me.